Like I wanted to be part of that 11% of women that hold the CRO
Right.
title. And that was what I had pathed my entire career towards. I felt like I had given up so much. I'd made so many sacrifices to achieve this dream. So it was surprising to me when I sat with myself and realized, I don't think I want to do that anymore. And I had to make like a pretty significant mindset shift.
Yeah.
And while I love being a founder, it is the work I am meant to be doing. I am the best boss that I've ever had. There was still a process of grieving the identity that I had for myself. And part of that was that I felt like my personal worth was very tied up in the title I had and the accolades and the money I made, and completely redefine my own sense of worth and start like a very new relationship with work.
Welcome to the She's So Sweet podcast, where we interview accomplished women who have worked their way to the C-suite. I'm your host, Kristi Faltorusso, Chief Customer Officer and award-winning customer success executive. I'm super excited to introduce our guest today. I've got Leslie Venetz, who's the founder of the Sales-Led GTM Agency. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Kristi.
I'm so excited to hear your story. And I gave you a pretty healthy prompt before we kicked off, and kind of like the legacy I'm looking to leave for my kid with this initiative of She's So Sweet. But I know that we've got tons and tons of listeners who are just really looking to learn from other successful women. And so super excited to dive into your story.
Yeah. Something that you said right before we went live is that throughout your career, you struggled to find like mentorship and sponsorship from other women, which is very much the same experience that I had. So I'm especially passionate about these types of conversations that encourage women to keep going and that let women know they're not alone. So yeah, very excited.
I love it. Well, then you're going to nail the conversation today, and I'm sure our listeners are going to get a ton of value. But Leslie, before we dive in, let's lay some foundation here. Tell folks who you are, what you're doing, what your role is. Let's start there.
Yeah, I spent 15 years in corporate doing B2B sales. 3 years ago, I left to make my passion project side hustle into my full-time job. So for the last three and a half years, I've been a full-time founder doing outbound, like top of funnel, done with you consulting for B2B SaaS service orgs in the 30 to 50 million range. Prior to that, I was a bit of a jack of all trades. I did transactional, like one call close selling, through to like 6-figure super consultative sales cycles. I worked in the service space for the first half of my career before transitioning over to SaaS. So have done both the subscription model as well as the just like one-off. I have sold to SMB. I spent a ton of my career selling to like Fortune 250 C-suite, so really penetrating the enterprise, like every single business unit, most industries. So it's something, honestly, that earlier in my career, like because every time I was being recruited for a new job or I was exploring a new job, the hiring managers and the recruiters would tell me that it was a real weakness that I hadn't spent 10 years in cloud. And what I realized is that it is actually probably my greatest strength in the work I do now, that I have sold so many different types of products within so many different sales cycles and dynamics and ICPs and industries, that I'm uniquely positioned to figure out sort of what has fit for purpose for different types of clients, versus showing up with just a generic playbook and, plopping it down and saying, oh, hope it works.
It's so interesting to me that what someone would see as a weakness is actually your superpower, right? And so it's why I say that is because I think it's interesting how people can influence our views of our value and the work that we do and where our strengths lie. And so I'm so glad that you actually view it the other way, because as you were describing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're super qualified to just do anything and talk about anything because you've seen it all. So I agree with you. I think it's your strength, not your weakness.
Thank you. And I feel like it comes up not just like for women in general, I see it come up often. Like that's a really specific example to me. But think about how many times you've heard a woman describe their superpower as curiosity or empathy or active listening. And if I think back to the beginning of my career, when I was interviewing, I probably would have gone out of my way to not mention that like empathy is a superpower of mine, because that would have made me seem less qualified for the job.
It's so interesting. Well, this is where perspective becomes reality, right? And everyone's got to kind of lean into what they want the reality of others to be about them. Well, listen, although maybe it was something that you've always dreamed about doing, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that maybe when you were very little Leslie didn't necessarily think that this is what she was going to be when she grew up. So I want you to think back as far back as you can remember. What did you actually think you were going to be when you were younger?
No, even Leslie as an adult didn't want to do sales.
I mean, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
Right, right. I really wanted to be a marine biologist.
Interesting.
Right, which I know is not, like, I know I'm not alone. I think it was like kids of a certain age, like kids that like came of age in the 90s. So maybe there was something in the zeitgeist, like some TV show we were all watching or something.
It was Free Willy. Free Willy did it to all of us.
I was like, I need to save all of them. Yeah, I really wanted to become a marine biologist. Like I was obsessed with animals in general. And I grew up in Montana. So I grew up in a landlocked state. And at that point I would not have seen the ocean. Like I didn't see the ocean for the first time until I was a bit older. So I think I was just enamored with like the mystery and the vastness of it combined with, the natural love of animals. So yeah, marine biologist was very high on my list for many years.
Okay. So then how did we go from marine biologist to this? Paint this journey for me, because I want to know also, when did this pivot?
I think it must have pivoted by maybe like grade 7 or grade 8, because by the time I got to high school, then I was pretty sure I would become a lawyer.
Oh.
So real pivot there from a joyful job working with animals to lawyer. But the crushing expectations and reality of the world had already started like weighing on my shoulders. Then I started applying for schools for college and got into some of my dream schools like UCLA and Tulane, and was looking at how much it would cost and was like,
yeah, that's real.
0% chance that I was going to be able to afford to go to those schools. And I was like not willing to take out, $80,000 a year in student loans to be able to go to a school with a fancy logo. And so instead I decided to stay in state for school. And that informed the direction of my studies and the direction of my life in a way that I wouldn't have anticipated. I think partially because I went to a liberal arts school, and they do have an incredible, like an award-winning law school, but I was heavily involved in student government while I was there. And one year ran for student body, like president, vice president, and we won. And that process of like running for and then holding office made me realize that I would rather like move to the woods and homestead than be in like politics or be a lawyer. Like I just realized that it was not that I couldn't do it, but it would be a very joyless life for me. And I had simultaneously, Kristi, been doing like Model Arab League and Model United Nations and a ton of work for like not-for-profits and fundraising for NGO type organizations. And so I kind of pivoted mentally that, instead of this more corporate track where I'm using some of these like rhetoric and fundraising skills, I'll take them over to the nonprofit track. I'll use my my sociology degree, my marketing degree. But even that came crashing down when I started looking for jobs for the first time.
Yeah.
And was like, I am not comfortable deciding that I'm going to make, 25, maybe 30K total wages, working my tail off. Like I am not going to live the rest of my life, like barely being able to afford to exist and knowing that I will work so extraordinarily hard, regardless of what job I have. So it again it forced a mindset pivot to be like, that you're an extraordinarily hard worker, like you're very gritty, you're very tenacious. Whatever job you do, you're going to give it 110% because that is my nature. I cannot stop myself. And that is what ultimately made me explore a job in sales, because it was one of the few gigs that like I had the skill set, at the qualifications to do, where I also had control over my financial future.
I love that. And I feel like that's not something enough folks consider so early in their career, right? I think it's like for you, I mean, you're so far ahead of most, because I mean, I did something similar, right? Like I went to school for public relations. After an internship in politics, PR politics, I will tell you, I very quickly also learned that politics was never going to be my future. But I took a job out of school making, and I remember this exact number, $32,500 was my entry point into the workforce. And at the time I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making so much money. I will tell you that was definitely not a lot after taxes and painful. Thankfully I was living at home, but it never dawned on me that that was something I could control, right? Or that there were other opportunities for me out there where I could earn more based on the level of effort that I put into my role. So, I mean, kudos to you for exploring that. What did you think? So now you kind of pivot and you get into sales. Like, what were some of your early like observations starting your career in sales? What are some of the things that you were like happily surprised about? And then also like, oh my gosh, what did I just get myself into?
I think I was happily surprised how easily it came to me, but that's probably both the beginning and the end of the list. Everything else was pretty horrible. The job that I took had an 18K base.
Okay.
The OTE they were advertising was 35K, but it was uncapped. And so I don't know if it was like naivety, foolish ambition, whatever it was. But even though I had never done this type of like, corporate, like C-suite penetrating sales before, I was just super sure that I was going to be able to like do this job and do it well enough to exceed the OTE and, be able to set myself up for a more comfortable life. And I was right. To be fair, I was right, but it was really tough. It was a super transactional environment, very much like boiler room energy. We were in a like beautiful luxury high rise in downtown Chicago, had the entire floor. And so it had this veil of looking really prestigious and very luxurious, but the day-to-day reality of 200 of us, like, sitting on this open sales floor, no computers at our desks, just phones and paper stacks of leads. And like, folks, this was 2008. Like it, it wasn't yesterday, but it's not like this is like the 1990s.
I'm like, 2008 feels like not that long ago for us to not have computers at our desks.
It's crazy. And it was like the type of outreach that we were being asked to do and the type of selling that we were being taught was super aggressive. It was very much in the old school, no doesn't mean no.
Right.
Like just keep going until it's a yes. Like, I mean, they were telling us to like actively, like emotionally manipulate people, to never lie. They never said lie, but it was very much like, unless they specifically ask, like you don't owe them the full truth. And it felt so icky and so gross. And I just like rejected that and pushed back on it immediately. It caused me so much anxiety. I would go home at night and cry. And I was like, oh my God, I need this job. Like I am in Chicago and I have all these bills to pay and I have no safety net. Like this job has to work out for me. And so I, like, even in those very early days, found myself resisting some of the like old school ways of selling and trying to find my own path, which was one of those things that pleasantly surprised me, that sales came very easily to me because it wasn't the extroverts that could sell ice to an Eskimo or argue with a stop sign or whatever stupid thing that people say. It wasn't those folks that were the top performers. It was the folks that were listening, that were asking smart questions, that were really diligent with their follow-ups and like their note taking and being strategic about their outreach. So it was, I think a blessing and a curse. Like it was a blessing to see that a way forward that felt more honest and felt more intuitive to me worked. But it was also super, super tough to be like, I just moved from Montana to Chicago. I'm in this new city. It's my first like post-college job. I really need the job. Like I was barely surviving. I was skipping meals. And for it to be so toxic, it was a little bit defeating for like, little like 20 something Leslie with her eyes wide to the world.
So Leslie, I guess here's an interesting observation I'm making. Like, obviously you continued your life and your career in sales, not your career in sales. How did that experience not turn you off to this? Because I could imagine that there's a lot of folks that find themselves in situations like you've described, and regardless of what the work is that they're doing, but when it's that toxic and it's taking a toll on you emotionally, mentally, physically, that it almost feels like, well, if this is what it's like, I'm not doing this. And they almost make extreme pivots to go do anything but that. And I see people, listen, I'm down Reddit rabbit holes all the time of people like pivoting out of careers entirely because of an isolated experience. So how did you know that it could be better?
I didn't know that it could be better. And I've seen the same thing, Kristi. Like I've seen so many people, both in that job as well as like, just folks in the community that I've had conversations with. They're like, oh, I tried sales out of college and I worked at this place doing this thing and it was so terrible. I would never do sales again. I can't believe you do sales. And they describe the situation. And I'm like, well, yeah, totally. I can see why that turned you off to the entire profession of sales forever. I think for me, two factors were at play. One was that I was really good at it. So I was putting up numbers. I was like literally breaking records for like pathing to number of logos closed and deals done. So part of it is that there was some, I think maybe like some ego involved in that. I was like, screw you, like, look at me. So I was finally making money. I was getting a lot of like recognition and appreciation for the work I was doing. And that did like really scratch an itch for me at that time. And the other catalyst is that I am so incredibly stubborn. And this has been like both a huge, I think cornerstone of my success, but it's also been one of the reasons that I have burned out like 3, maybe 3.5 times. Like I will brute force something. Like if I want something to work, I will figure out how to make it work, even if it's like slowly killing me inside. And that's very much what was happening at this job, that I was adamant that I wouldn't let these people win. Like I would be better than them. I would get the promotions that they weren't getting. Like I would have my own team. I would create my own culture and I wouldn't let them keep me down. So it was the combination of like being a high performer very early. So I got a little bit more leeway than other folks. and also being so stubborn and so adamant that like I would show them.
The She's So Sweet podcast is brought to you by Client Success. Client Success is an all-in-one customer success platform to help post-sale implementation and success teams manage customers from new to renew. Through an industry-leading platform approach, Client Success gives businesses an in-depth view into customer health, product usage trends, along with churn and risk data so that your team can not only retain customers, but help them grow as well. Whether it's managing customer onboarding workflows in shared portals, building custom health scores, tracking sentiment with NPS surveys, or doing more with less through AI and automations, Client Success gives customer success professionals a true one-stop platform to manage all aspects of the customer journey. To learn more about the industry's fastest to implement customer success platform, visit www.clientsuccess.com. That's Client Success. Simple, powerful customer success. Okay, well, listen, obviously you didn't stay in that role forever. So now kind of walk me through, because I'm sure there were several of these moments, but like, what were some of the most pivotal moments or decisions that you feel like contributed to ultimately getting you to where you are right now, which is owning your own agency?
Yeah, one of them was working at a early stage startup. I joined a bootstrap startup as employee number 1.
Whoa. Okay. Like I've been like employee 20, but I've never been employee 1. Like that's not a bet I've ever taken. So talk to me about that experience.
Well, Kristi, don't ever think about that. It was insane. I hadn't come out of the startup world.
Yeah.
So I simply did not grasp like the magnitude of what I was saying yes to. And it wasn't just employee number 1, right? It was employee 1 at a bootstrap startup with an absentee founder. And like intentionally absentee. I knew this going in. It wasn't a surprise, but I was just like, well, it's not that big of a deal, whatever. I got this handled. It was so much freaking work. I was working like 80, 100-hour weeks every single week. We had no money to the point where to get leads. I was signing up for a lead database and doing the 1-2 week free trial, and then would have to cancel that and like sign up for a new one. It was crazy. That job, I mean, I both learned so much. I mean, working 80, 100-hour weeks, like I was working 2.5 jobs, and it really felt like I was, because I was closing deals. I was hiring and managing a team. I was doing like lead gen. I was doing demand gen. I was doing customer success. I was owning the marketing and then doing some like behind the scenes, like finance, HR stuff too. So that job, while I was drinking from a fire hose, and it was really overwhelming at the time, in retrospect, I just think, oh my gosh, the way I leapfrogged my knowledge forward in the 2 years, or like a little less than 2 years I did that job, is crazy. And it was the first time that I thought, if I can create an MVP for these folks and successfully launch it and set up an entire GTM strategy from scratch and launch that so successfully in a saturated market that in 9 months we had 21 logos, I could do it for myself. And so that is actually at the end of that job is when I opened my LLC to have it like just
in case. Yep.
Yeah. That was a really big one. And another really big one was actually a job that I left after 6 months because I was being like aggressively sexually harassed and verbally abused. And for a while, at first I was just hanging on for dear life. I was like super depressed, and it just absolutely sabotaged like my confidence, my ability to give up. Heck, like it was bad for a while. But on the other side of that, it really became the fuel that fired me for many years. And it now is no longer the fuel that fires me, because it just like, it doesn't have that same amount of impact on the way I think about myself and I think about the world around me. But it later became a catalyst to like take back my own story and take back my own narrative about how good I was at the work I do, like how important my contributions are, how much knowledge and expertise I have. And that became part of the reason that I started creating content. And then the content is part of the reason I felt confident enough to leave corporate America to become a full-time founder. So it's like, I would never wish that on anybody, but I was able to use the experience to like become a source of motivation and then a source of like kind of creativity, or at least a desire to be the one that was creating my own narrative and not letting somebody else's treatment of me change how I felt about myself or change like the stories I was telling myself.
Well, one, I thank you so much for being so open as to share some of that experience that you've had. I'm so still disappointed to hear how many women we have as guests here, some that openly share their stories and experiences and some that don't feel comfortable with, and I never force the conversation. But it is still so concerning that, you know, we are not retired by any means, right? We are still, as far as I'm concerned, I am still young. You're still young in our careers.
It's my birthday today.
Is it? Leslie, we would have started. I would have sang. I mean, nobody would have stayed for the rest of the episode. We would have had a high drop-off rate, but I would have sang anyway.
It can be the outro.
Oh, maybe that is how we wrap up. But so happy birthday to you, Leslie. But yeah, we're young. And so for me to still hear so many women having to navigate sexual assault, sexual harassment in the workplace, it is crazy to me, right? Because we think about this as something that existed in the 80s or before, right? Or earlier. And it's so upsetting to hear that like anything in the 2000s, because I still feel like 2002 was yesterday, that it is still prevalent. It's still happening. And so to the extent that you're willing to answer, how long did you stay in that situation? And kind of what was the turning point for you where you were able to either report, navigate it, the person left, like, you know, what was the experience with that to the extent you're able to share?
Yeah, 6 months.
Okay.
And part of the reason that job, can I curse on this?
You can say whatever you need to say, Leslie. This is your story.
Part of the reason that job fucked my brain up so much, like, it wasn't just the sexual harassment. It wasn't just the verbal abuse, but it was coming to terms with my reaction to it. Because my reaction, I mean, the guy that was perpetrating this, there were a couple bad actors, but there was one bad actor, I don't know if he's actually diagnosed as it, but I think he's like the closest I've ever seen to like a real life narcissist, where he had this incredible knack for twisting my words and turning everything around. And so I felt myself like constantly like backpedaling and apologizing, and it created this talk track that I had going on that was like, if I just work harder, he'll be nicer to me. If I just accomplish this or show him I can do this, then I'll earn his respect and he'll stop treating me this way. And the hardest thing of all of it was actually coming to terms with the fact that like I really viewed myself as this strong woman, because I am a strong woman, but I found myself in this like extremely abusive relationship. And it took me 6 months to realize that like, I'm not the problem. There's literally nothing I can do, nothing I can say that is going to change the way that he behaves or the way that he treats me. And the way that he treats me actually has nothing to do with me and everything to do with him and his need to control and his need to dominate. And so I went home for the holidays, and I had 2 weeks off because it was a British company. They have holidays shut down. And I get a call from this guy. And this was not the first call where he started by just like screaming curse words at me, calling me stupid, calling me a cunt, calling me a bitch, like crazy. But this one, he demanded that I fly home early from the holidays with my family because I'd lied to him and some people worked over Christmas. And so I should come in because he's already called my entire team without my permission. He already called my 24 reps and demanded that they all come in and work unpaid to try to get some more commissions in before the end of the year. And it was both having just like a little bit of distance from him for the week prior and like being able to process how insane that was without having to like be there presently and like put out fires and try to like help my reps and protect my reps, like having to just sort of process it from a distance. And so then I came back and like put in my notice.
So you did come back? Did you leave your trip early and you came
home?
No.
I came back
after.
Like, when my holiday was over. I came back in January. And I reported it to the CEO. It was the third time that I reported his behavior to the CEO, where he was like, you know, like calling me like insane and screaming at me. And once again, the CEO was like, I just think you're being sensitive. I don't think that that's how he meant it. Like, you just need to buck up. Completely dismissed me. Like, didn't call me a liar, but like really insinuated that like I was exaggerating. I was the one that was like blowing it out of proportion, and that like this guy was fine. This guy was fine, Leslie. Just get over it. And it was just kind of like the like knock after knock that I was like, okay, this CEO was not going to protect me. Quite the opposite. Like, he is going out of his way to protect the abuser. This guy is insane. And part of what had kept me there the 6 months was feeling this like responsibility to protect the team that I hired. And it was this moment of being like, the best way, honestly, that I can protect this team is by showing them that they deserve better than this. And that nobody should stay in an environment where they're treated this way. So I quit that day. And the CEO made me quit directly to my abuser, called me into a room where he was there, and said, Leslie, I think you have something to tell, insert name. And then the abuser literally said, I don't understand why you would leave. You're doing such a good job, because I was like, we were smashing numbers. And then he said, I don't understand. Was it something I did? And I was like, give me the fuck out of here.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
it was
like,
crazy.
It's like all of that. And then like the gaslighting as the cherry on top.
It was crazy. It was like, still now, that was like a decade ago. And I'm still just so mystified that a person like that, that's that nasty and that terrible, and was not particularly good at his job either.
It's always usually the case.
Was able to ascend into this, I don't remember what his title is. It wasn't CRO, but it was like whatever.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even my direct reporting line. My direct reporting line was to the CEO.
What? That kind of like makes it even that much crazier.
I know. It was crazy.
Well, okay, listen, let's pause for a minute, because anybody who's still listening to this story and like gasping the gasps that I am gasping, let me just remind you all that if you ever find yourself in a situation that feels remotely even close to crossing a boundary for you, and it does not need to be as extreme as the situation that Leslie just painted for us, get out. Go say something, but if anybody in any circumstances, and it doesn't mean it needs to be male, it could be female, get out. It is not a healthy work environment for you. You do not deserve that. It is illegal. Also, like, if you want to go that far, but you have rights and you have boundaries, and you need to protect them at all costs. And Leslie, I found myself in situations. In fact, one of my newsletters that I sent out weekly just recently talked about that, because not this exact thing, but staying too long for your team. Because as leaders, we put so much into building and hiring and creating a culture. And we are so good leaders are so connected to our people and wanting to create great environments for them to thrive and be successful that it is so hard for us to come to a realization where this role is no longer serving us and to leave without guilt and to leave without feeling a sense of like we're abandoning them as if they are our children. So, I mean, I feel very deeply what you're describing in terms of like why you would stay and how you kind of navigated that experience. But man, I am so sorry to hear that. That's horrible.
Thanks. It was the actual worst. And I'd add one thing, that one of my biggest regrets is not holding them legally responsible.
Yeah.
I was so damaged at the time. Like it really, like I was like genuinely depressed, like didn't get out of bed on the weekends, like wasn't answering people's phone calls, was drinking too much. Like I was in a really bad place. And I didn't feel like I had the emotional bandwidth to like go through a lawsuit. And then when I finally felt like emotionally recovered enough to be able to like process the gravity of the abuses that I encountered and realize that like they need to be held accountable. It was 9 months down the road. And I reached out to, 12 to 15 lawyers, and not a single one of them would take my case, because if it was that bad, I would have done something about it immediately.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm just going to go ahead and say like that it is crazy to me to hear things like that. I actually find that a lot of people don't pursue legal action in situations this extreme because they're told it will ruin your career.
Yeah.
You'll be unhireable. Yeah. And like, I feel like that message, we need to like toss that out the window too, because that to me is crazy. Yeah. Right. So because I am defending myself, taking care of myself, or protecting myself, I am going to be unhireable because I raised a red flag about something this horrible that was going on.
Yeah. I was told that it wouldn't be worth it.
Right. And I have been told certain things as well, different situations, but same message, right? Oh, you don't want to do that. That's career suicide.
Yep.
No one will ever hire you. This world is too small. This community is too small. Everyone talks.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, that sucks. I hope people that are listening, if you're finding yourself in a situation like that, please know that there are alternative ways to manage this and you don't need to stay. But now, Leslie, we have to pivot because now I'm getting down a sad rabbit hole and it's your birthday and we're going to like elevate the conversation. We got to bring our spirits back up. So that said, you obviously had to make a lot of pivots. There were some challenges you had to navigate. I mean, that is the understatement of this entire conversation. But let's talk about your successes, because I feel like as women, we're so focused on like what we want to do next and like our next goal and our next milestone that we often don't reflect on all of the success and the impact that we've had along the way. So this is your forcing function here let's talk about all of the wins that you've had. Give me some of the successes. When you think back on your career, you're like, oh my God, I did this. I built that. I had this huge moment in my career that needs to be celebrated every day. So what are some of those for you?
Oh man. So the list is long because I'm really good at what I do. Certainly like that job that I mentioned at the startup where I literally created an MVP from the seed of an idea and then successfully built and launched the GTM strategy to get us to 21 logos in 9 months. Like that's crazy. I didn't realize how crazy it was until I was applying for jobs after that. And like, I found that some people didn't believe me because they were like, that's such
it's so unheard of. It's like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
And so then they'd have a bunch of follow-up questions. And then when they realized that like, I'd really like walked the walk, I could answer all the questions, I could go deep. They were like, that's wow. So that's a pretty significant one, but I've had a career. I spent a lot of my career in player coach roles. And so I think, I'm not a huge advocate of the player coach role because I think it has a high level of burnout when you're doing two jobs. Mm-hmm. I think being somebody that has repeatedly exceeded my own quota while carrying a bag while managing large teams, that also we're top performing teams. Like that's pretty incredible. But I have to say, Kristi, my biggest win, the biggest thing that I celebrate is having the courage to walk away from the dream, the path that I had spent my entire career working towards, and leaving corporate to be a founder, because I did not aspire to entrepreneurship. It was not modeled in my community. Like the founder life was not something that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a CRO. Like I wanted to be part of that 11% of women that hold the CRO title. And that was what I had pathed my entire career towards. Why I'd stayed in some of these like not so great jobs, and why I'd done the 80, 100-hour weeks. Like I felt like I had given up so much. I'd made so many sacrifices to achieve this dream. So it was surprising to me when I sat with myself and realized, I don't think I want to do that anymore. And I had to make like a pretty significant mindset shift. Yeah. And while I love being a founder, it is the work I am meant to be doing. I am the best boss that I've ever had. There was still a process of like grieving the abandoning the goal that I had been working so hard, like grieving the identity that I had for myself. And part of that was that like I felt like my personal worth was very tied up in the title I had and the accolades and the money I made. And so it was a pretty big deal for me to be able to walk away from all of that, and completely redefine my own sense of worth and start like a very new relationship with work, where like work is a thing I do and I love it and I'm passionate about it and I'm good at it. And I am so glad that I get to share like my gifts and my knowledge with the world. But like now work is a thing I do versus my entire identity.
It's crazy, but a lot, obviously you're not alone in that thinking, right? It's why when people get laid off, right, there's so much emotional struggles there because they have wrapped their entire identity and self-worth in the work that they did in the companies that they worked with and for. But now I am seeing a big shift in a lot of people who are stepping into solopreneurship, entrepreneurship, and it's super exciting to see people betting on themselves, and I love that for them. What's some advice you can offer to anybody who is maybe making that shift in their career right now?
For sure. Make sure that you have a runway. I think one of the biggest injustices that people do is that they don't really plan for entrepreneurship. And I get it that there are times where like you are laid off unexpectedly and maybe you do not have the privilege of having money and savings, like you were in a paycheck to paycheck situation for whatever reason. And then you use entrepreneurship as a way to survive. I get that. Putting those folks aside, because that's often like the exception, not the rule of folks. I find that most folks that are in entrepreneurship are just like kind of sick of working in corporate or have a bit of a like, screw you, I'm out sort of experience. And then they find themselves really, really, really struggling because they underestimate how much time it takes to ramp.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, and they, as a result, start saying yes to bad deals and bad work because they need the money to be able to keep, staying the course as an entrepreneur. So give yourself a bit of a runway so that you have freedom to say no to bad deals, which means that you also have freedom to build the type of entrepreneurial life that is one that is good and healthy and brings you, happiness. And also like, don't worry out of the gates that all of your website and your marketing collateral, et cetera, is not perfect. I run into this so often. It's like, somebody launched 3 months ago I'm like, cool. Like, how's everything going? And they're like, well, I haven't officially started marketing myself yet because my website's not done. Oh, cool. Nobody gives a shit. Like, if you would have seen some of my slides, straight to jail with me. They were atrocious. I made my own brand palette. And I don't know what possessed me to choose the colors that I chose, but I chose this like ruddy gray, blue, and then like a burnt orange. And then I made all of my slides in Google with arguably the worst template they have, and then used burnt orange as my primary color. Like they are, like they're physically painful for my eyes to look at. But you know what? I still closed $100,000 in revenue within 3 months of going out on my own because people didn't care about the slides.
Leslie, I was just going to say, tell us how the color palette doesn't matter.
I know. Like, I'm not a marketing expert. So maybe if the thing that you're selling is brand design, this advice would apply to you. But if you, like us, are sales experts or customer success experts, nobody expects you to also be a marketing expert. So like, just say, I made these slides myself. I thought it was more important to be able to like get something together and put it in front of you than to, waste a day in Canva. And I found that people are generally fine with that. And honestly, if they're not fine with it, they'd probably be a pain in the butt to work with.
Not for you. Not for you. Not for you. Not for anybody. Not for me. Not today. Leslie, well, listen, I am so appreciative of you sharing your story with us. There was so much to learn from in there, and I appreciate your vulnerability and honesty. What's the one thing you want to leave our listeners with?
Something that I read on a tarot Instagram account once.
I already am so in love with whatever it is you're going to say.
I loved it so much. And it was that nobody is as uniquely qualified to step the fuck up and accomplish your dreams as you are.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, like totally repeatable worthy. Yes.
So thank you, random tarot account.
I mean, listen, I follow a ton of them on Instagram and I screenshot the ones that I love because I don't know how to save and then go back to things that I save on Instagram. So we just screenshot because I'm not that savvy.
Very elder millennial code of you.
I embrace who I am, and that is who I am. Very good, Leslie. Well, thank you so much for your time today and all your generosity and sharing your story and your lessons, your learnings with us. I really appreciate it. I hope you had as much fun today as I did. And Leslie, happy birthday. I'm not going to sing to you because that would be a horrible way to end this.
Oh my gosh, Kristi,
it wouldn't be on a high note.
What people could do if they really wanted to help me celebrate my birthday.
Yeah.
And speaking of celebrations, my debut book publishes this year.
When?
It doesn't publish until August 5, but I'm in pre-order, pre-sale mode.
Yeah, you are.
I'm tracking towards becoming a Wall Street Journal bestselling author.
So how do me and my listeners make your dreams come true? What do we do? Where do we go? What do you need?
Noble and type in Profit Generating Pipeline. That's the name of the book. The easiest way to support and to purchase the book is at salesledgtm.com/book. salesledgtm.com/book.
You've given us so much that I think that is the very least that me and all of our listeners can give back to you.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, Leslie, thank you again so much. For everybody who is still listening, and I hope you're all still here with us, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, connect with us on LinkedIn, go check out Leslie's book, go give it some 5 stars, go pre-order it, go help support our girl. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, we'll see you soon. Hi guys, I want to share a bit about an organization that I support called Wednesday Women. They're on a mission to increase the visibility of executive women leaders that you should know, learn from, and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, they share the profile of 2 amazing women each week, on Wednesdays of course. And now just imagine if we all followed, amplified, and nominated the women that we want to see more of. Their initiative provides examples of women CEOs, founders, sales executives, technical leaders, and so many more. By supporting Wednesday Women, you'll see more of these professionals in your social feeds, of course, but also on stages, podcasts, and panels. If you're interested in learning more and supporting their initiative, head over to www.wednesdaywomen.org or follow them on LinkedIn.